Welcome to a continuing series with Michael Shrimpton. To deal or not to deal? That is a question. Part 1 of 2 with Caroline Stevens.
Welcome to Stepping Stones to Awareness show. This is part 1 of a 2-part initial series. I'm Caroline Stevens, Deputy Chairman of democracy17-4.org. Now, we're a campaign group. We're trying to bring all the Brexiteers and non-Brexiteers together under one umbrella, no party, not necessarily a party affiliation, to put one good man or woman into Parliament at the next general election. So today I've got Michael Shrimpton. He's UKIP writer. He writes also for Veterans for Today, and he's also a keen Brexiteer. And I've got some questions to ask Michael. So I'd like to ask some questions of Michael Shrimpton, who is a barrister. He is an author, and in fact, he's promoting his Spy Hunter book today. So Michael, over to you now. Thank you so much for coming into the studios again.
Pleasure. I'm sure the Bar Standards Board would want me to say that I'm subject to interim suspension as a barrister, which I'm challenging on the 19th of September in a 3-day hearing.
So I'm going to be a pussycat today in this session, certainly in part 1 anyway. I've got some questions for you that one of my colleagues on Democracy 17.4 has given me to ask you. So, question 1. Obviously, this is your opinion because you are not in the government. And
I assume it doesn't relate to the 4th Test match at Southampton.
Cricket just goes straight above my head, I must admit.
We're in trouble.
Ah, right. Are we talking about Brexit or are we talking about cricket?
I was talking about the cricket. We need a wicket.
I think we need some help with Brexit as well. So, so this is question number 1. Will we get Brexit or Brino, which is...
Brexit in name only.
Exactly. On the 29th of March, 2019.
Well, I think we'll get Brexit because I don't think we're going to have a deal with the EU. The EU is fundamentally opposed to any deal that doesn't involve Britain staying in the single market, essentially. They might accept the customs union, but they want freedom of movement of labour, which means single market. And that's always been the case. They have the 4 freedoms of capital, labour and
services,
goods. Yeah, exactly. And they're very reluctant for any sort of deal which departs from the 4 freedoms. The Germans are no doubt willing to press a deal because their manufacturers sell so many goods to the UK, particularly motor vehicles, trucks, buses, which is the largest single component of Anglo-European trade. So it's possible the Commission will be forced to give in to Germany. Germany's the controlling power of the EU. But I think the 2 parties are so far apart that we won't get a deal. And of course, if Theresa May goes in October, as hopefully she will, then that will kill the deal altogether.
Okay, question number 2. What are our chances of a hard Brexit, no deal, and revert to World Trade Organization rules? You've sort of answered part of that, I think.
Yeah, I think they're pretty good. I don't use the expression hard Brexit. That's a propaganda phrase.
It is?
Exactly. That's a propaganda phrase. To listen to Sky News and the BBC, you would think that leaving the EU under WTO terms means we are no longer able to export to the EU. It's absolute rubbish. Most countries in the world trade with the EU. They're not members of it. I mean, China trades with the EU. The United States trades with EU member states. It's not China and the United States are not members of the European Union.
Well, they don't have free movement of labour for a start,
They don't have free movement of labour. We don't... clearly, British exports will suffer to a degree if we have tariffs, but that's fine because German and French exports to the United Kingdom will suffer, and we'll be able to make up the losses with import substitution. I've hardly heard anybody talk about import substitution, by which I mean that where you're trading with a country, or a group of countries in this case, at a deficit, you bring in tariffs. It's in your interest to have tariffs, because you then are able to substitute with domestic production what previously you've been importing.
So basically, instead
of importing Mercedes-Benzes, we just buy Jaguars.
Well, that's right. I'll put an order in for one of those.
Well, they're not much nicer cars than Benzes anyway, so
How the other half live, ladies and gentlemen. Number 3 then, question number 3. What are the risks of Theresa May stitching us up with the Chequers proposal? Perhaps for the benefit of the people at home, what is the Chequers proposal?
Well, it's the worst idea since Munich. I mean, it's a plan to effectively surrender to the EU. It's Theresa May giving up her red lines, Theresa May basically hauling up the white flag of surrender. But the Chequers proposal has very few supporters. It's virtually guaranteed her removal as leader of the Tory party. The EU don't like it because it doesn't go far enough, which is absurd. And the public are not very enthusiastic about it either. So there are very few takers for Chequers. I can't see Chequers happening. And it might. The trouble is Theresa May is backed by the Cabinet Secretary. He backs, this is Sir Jeremy Von Haywood, as I call him. Sir Jeremy backs Chequers.
Now, wasn't he the guy who suppressed the report on Tony Blair's involvement in the Iraq War?
Oh, he had a hand in that, yes.
A big hand.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Yes,
these red lines...
I'm not a big fan of Sir Jeremy. He's not a big fan of mine.
Well, of course, these red lines are part of Democracy 17-4's manifesto, if you like. You know, we've got mutual friends. Sir William Jaffrey is the chairman, as I'm the deputy chairman. And, you know, we have red lines there about immigration, fishing and such matters. And we can see all our red lines being tossed in the bin with Theresa May.
I mean, Theresa May couldn't give a toss about our fishermen. I mean, we just had French boats stopping English boats fishing lawfully.
Throwing rocks.
Over
scallops.
Not a single French fisherman killed. It was hopeless. Not a single French fishing boat sunk by the Royal Navy. Absolutely hopeless. We should have been putting shots across their bows. The government, the May government, couldn't give a tuppenny halfpenny damn about fishing or fishing communities.
Absolutely.
Or fisherwomen. Their attitude is to basically give the EU as much as they can get away with. Theresa May it was a disastrous mistake to have Theresa May as leader of the Tory party.
Was it a mistake?
It was a huge mistake. It was a disastrous
mistake. Would sound it was like a mistake. But was it not by design?
Well, it was clearly by design by the bad guys, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going...
It was a huge mistake to choose Andrea Leadsom as the challenger because she was so flaky that she didn't...
It was a shame. A lot of people were rooting for her. Question number 4. Will May try to bounce MPs into accepting this on a vote? If so, can she get the numbers, do you think?
I don't think she can. Much will depend on the Labour Party's attitude, but the Labour Party don't think Chequers goes far enough. So the Labour Party may well, and the Labour Party are desperate for a victory, so the Labour Party may well want to force May out and may well vote against the Chequers plan, in which case there should be sufficient Tory rebels to bring it down, which would be very good news indeed.
Number 5. May discussed the Chequers proposal with Merkel before presenting it to the Cabinet. Do you approve of a state document being discussed with a foreign power?
Certainly don't. It was outrageous.
Right, well, there's a lot of things we do with a foreign power.
Effectively, Theresa May was behaving...
It's treason, isn't it?
Well, it's not treason, but...
Is it not?
No, it's not treason, but it's behaving as though Britain was a German client state, which in practice we are.
Okay.
And we will remain a German client state until we shut down GO2 and reorganise the Cabinet Office. And
GO2 being?
That's the German intelligence operation in London.
Within MI6?
It's headquartered within MI6 and it effectively runs MI6. And it effectively runs the government because it controls the Cabinet Office.
It's amazing that none of our MPs mention this, isn't it, in Parliament?
No, well, MPs are intelligence. Remember, there isn't an MP of high intelligence. Jacob Rees-Mogg is the smartest MP and likely to be the next leader of the Tory party, I hope. But
are they particularly chosen for their intellect, then, do you think?
No, MPs are chosen because they don't have intellect. The one thing if you have an intellect, you can't get elected. I mean, it's almost
you have to be the nodding dog. Right, let me think. Number 6, were Theresa May's actions unconstitutional? No, actually, he says or treasonous or both. What should be the penalty for her conduct?
Well, it was certainly... It wasn't treason, because treason is often misunderstood. Treason is a statutory crime. And in order for something to be treasonous, you have to breach the statute, the Treason Act 1351, or one of the later Treason Acts. So what she did wasn't in breach. She wasn't encompassing the death of the sovereign. She wasn't breaching the Treason Act 1351. So it wasn't treason. It wasn't unconstitutional, but it was politically unwise and politically unacceptable.
But of course, it could be argued that all the MPs have been treasonous anyway, because we are currently being controlled by a foreign power anyway.
Well, yes, but that's, again, it's not treason. It's just mismanagement. I mean, it was the disastrous decision to go into the EEC meant that we effectively became a German client state, because the EEC was Germany's plan for the post-war domination of Europe.
I can see why you're a barrister, Michael. Now, number 7.
Or even a suspended barrister, yes.
In your view, will the imminent Italian budget force Italy out of the euro and trigger the collapse of the currency? Now, I'm quite concerned about this, because having just come back from Italy and seen the crime and the migration literally hitting me in the face, Italy must be under a huge amount of stress.
I think it's more likely that Hamilton will win the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, which I don't think he's going to. He's currently, I think, in second place. Listeners will have to forgive the odd sporting reference, but it's a big sporting Sunday today. We're in trouble in Monza.
Oh, is it Grand Prix today, is it as well?
Sorry?
Is it Grand Prix today?
It's Italian Grand Prix today at Monza, yes, and we're in trouble. Hamilton's in trouble, and we're in trouble at Southampton in the 4th Test match, unless a wicket has fallen since we started.
Well, when you consider that people are dying all over the world, I mean, putting things in perspective.
Well, yes.
Sport.
Yes,
It's not life and
important.
death, is it really?
Oh, no, it's more important than that. This is a Test match.
Okay.
It's not a one-day international. I mean, it's far more important than life and death.
You heard it here first.
Yes.
Right, number 8. Does the new 5-year Fixed Term Act preclude a change of government despite votes of no confidence? Well, we've already seen, I mean, this question was given to me, but we've already seen a general election in 2 years before.
Yeah, the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, to which I was opposed, the effect of the Fixed Term Parliaments Act is that it's very difficult to have an election before the 5-year term of Parliament expires. If Theresa
We've had it already.
Well, yes, but I think the position, the Fixed Term Parliaments Act means it's very unlikely that we will have a Labour government. It means it's very unlikely. When Theresa May goes, I'm hoping she'll go in the autumn. Well, we already, depending on when you date the autumn, we're already in the autumn. I'm obviously hoping she'll go at the party conference. We're desperate to get rid of her in the Tory party. Absolutely desperate. She's got to go. We've got to have a Brexit PM. Theresa May goes. She'll hang on. She'll resign. She'll stay on as a caretaker while the Tory party goes through its internal election process. And there won't be a general election any more than there was when Gordon Brown took over from Tony Blair.
Now, I know you've mentioned Mog a few times, but you are a good friend of Mog, so I just think it's fair to tell the viewers that you are a friend of Jacob Rees-Mogg.
I'm a friend. I don't think Jacob probably be alarmed if I said I was a good friend. We've known each other for a number of years. Bear in mind, his father took the lead role in challenging the Maastricht Treaty, or a lead role. Certainly took a lead role in the litigation. That was the Rees-Mogg and the Foreign Secretary. And I was the junior barrister to Leo Price QC, a great Eurosceptic, sadly no longer with us. Leo and I started that case off. And then Bill Cash, who was involved, did a deal with the Foreign Office, I'm told, in exchange for some paltry concessions on the manifesto for the next European elections. Leo and I were forced off, and we were replaced by David Panic, who was a great pro-European, who then argued that the Treaty of Rome was some sort of constitution of this country, which, with respect to my learned friend Mr. Panic, Lord Panic, is total nonsense.
But you see, for the people at home, all they see is all these people. It's deals, wheels within wheels, and deals within deals, and people who don't perhaps live down their street. And so we can see there is this massive gulf between those who are in charge of us, and they don't identify with us.
We're not a functioning democracy, so there's a huge disconnect between the people and those doing the governing.
Now I've got to get you back on track, because
and then we need to reform the Cabinet Office, because the Cabinet Secretary is effectively a quasi-dictator.
To Theresa May's cabinet, as per the previous cabinets, are all their
Well,
own little
house-trained
body,
idiots.
haven't they?
Yeah, but the cabinet house-trained idiots. They don't know what they're doing. But remember, none of them.
I'm not going to disagree.
None of them has a high intellect. I mean, Theresa May is not very bright. No offence intended.
How did they get into Cambridge and Oxford, or is it...
Well, the Cambridge and Oxford just hand out degrees of the rations, don't they?
Right, number 9.
You don't have to be very bright to get a first
Now,
class
this is
degree
going to
at
be
Oxford.
controversial. Do you think UKIP has a future? Is it controlled opposition? Yes. And do you think their failure to get a single MP elected in 25 years militates against them? Well, actually, I have to say, the person who wrote this question perhaps didn't accommodate the fact that they did have 2 Conservative MPs who called the by-elections in their constituencies, and then they got re-elected under a UKIP ticket, because I actually did help at
Yes.
that time.
There's Medway and Clacton-on-Sea.
Yeah, Rochester
Rochester.
and Strood.
Yeah.
So I think really, controlled opposition, well, they won't talk about 5G, they won't talk about EU military unification, they won't talk about lots of things, particularly, they won't generally talk about common law. So do you think UKIP has a future then?
Well, it doesn't have a long-term future.
No.
I think that once we leave the EU, and we're
Yeah.
leaving the EU on March 29th, once we leave the EU, I think UKIP's role is done.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to be all over bar the shouting. It clearly isn't. We've clearly got to shut down GO2. We've got to shut down the German telephone tapping centre in London, which supplies most of the blackmail material to GO2, which is the basis, one of the bases of their power.
But governments are always spying on each other, though, aren't they?
Well, yes, but in this case, we've got the German intelligence running through the medium of a German electronics company, a telephone tapping centre in London, and it is tapping the telephones of every senior cabinet minister, every judge, every High Court judge, every Crown Court judge, every MP, most peers, and they're acquiring blackmail material. So they're acquiring blackmail material on judges, for example. So if a judge has a mistress, then GO2 will find out the name of the mistress. That then gives GO2 the ability to lean on that judge take an example, the drug trafficking allegation involves a GO2.
Well, that's another programme in itself.
That's how they get rid of drug cases. We've got... people are very reluctant, particularly lawyers, to talk about blackmail of the judiciary, but it's a fact.
Of course it
and
is.
the reason we have blackmail of the judiciary is because, A, Tony Blair gave away the independence of the judiciary when he agreed to set up the Department of Constitutional Affairs, which meant the Cabinet Office got control of the judicial personnel files, which is a huge change. I mean, that was barely discussed at the time. The significance of it was simply not understood. Nobody in Parliament knew what was going on.
Well, I think that requires another programme on itself. So we're going to
yeah.
question number 10.
Yeah.
If UKIP is a red herring distraction, I don't know why he says if, is the best hope for our country the establishment of a new political grouping to oppose both Tory and Labour and therefore get MPs elected, which I guess Democracy 17.4 is about. You could be in a constituency. You could be a member of a Tory party, and Miles could be a member of UKIP. I could be a member of the Green Party, but we all want to be we want to be an anti-corruption.
Yes.
Programme. We want Brexit. So we vote amongst ourselves in the constituency who is going to be our Brexit anti-globalisation
the trouble
ticket.
is that you can't stand against your own party. So either 17.4 becomes a political party and puts up candidates, in which case it'll simply lose its deposit, like UKIP does in every election. I mean, UKIP hardly ever wins a deposit, hardly ever saves a deposit. Either it puts up candidates or it doesn't. If it's a political party, it's putting up candidates. But of course, it can't then have members you can't be a member of more than one political party at the same time.
But Democracy 17.4 allows you to be a member, and you can be a member of, say, UKIP at the same time.
Yes, but UKIP, but the minute 17.4 puts up a candidate,
Yes.
for election, then the rules of the political parties will effectively
No, but there would
result in
be
the expulsion
independent MPs. That's the thing. That's the beauty of it. Anyway, we shall move on.
So
We wouldn't necessarily be a political party.
I don't think it's going to work. It's a nice idea, but I don't think it's going to work.
Okay, we'll see.
The way forward is to have a sensible Tory Brexiteer Prime Minister like Jacob Rees-Mogg, and then for the Tory party to the Tory government to do what is needed to make sure that we have a genuine Brexit.
Okay, and I'm not going to cause any.
No, you're not a Tory. I'm a Tory. I'm a Tory.
Ruffling of
You're
any
not.
feathers at this moment in time.
Yeah. You can't.
I'm biding my time, ladies and gentlemen.
We have first past the post in this country, thank God. Under first past the post, it's extremely difficult for third parties to get.
Well, as I
MPs
understand
elected.
it,
Well, UKIP has failed.
Yeah, but as I understand it, to be fair to UKIP now, Douglas Carswell did get given the job of trying to sort out this first past the post, and as far as I'm aware, the EU put pressure on, and so it never got any further.
Well, I don't know about the EU putting pressure. The first past the post works, and it was rejected. The proportional representation was rejected in a referendum, and rightly so. It's dead. We're not going to have PR.
We have it in Europe.
Well, they have it in Europe, and it's one of the reasons why.
And we have it in the European Parliament with the way we, that's why we got UKIP MEPs in there.
I know, but
for what use the MEPs are, in effect, because they can't change anything.
Well, what's used as the European Parliament? It's like the Reichstag.
It's just a dictatorship.
Well, the European Parliament is just window.
It's just a talking shop for an hour. You get a minute and a half to speak.
Yeah.
And self-aggrandizement.
Yeah.
And then you sit down again.
All the UKIP successors did in the European Parliament. Yes, UKIP were very successful in putting pressure on the main political parties to agree to a referendum. So UKIP's greatest triumph was the referendum in 2016.
Which could have been a campaign group then, couldn't it, in effect?
Well, it had to make a decision. It's carrying on as a political party, and I can understand why, because we still haven't left the European Union, and there are still huge debates about our relationship with Europe after we leave. And clearly May and Hayward and the Cabinet Office and GO2 all want Britain to effectively remain a German client state after we leave the EU. And if we let May carry on in office and we let Hayward carry on as the Cabinet Secretary, then it may well be Brino.
Right, now, question number 11, which is our last question of this part one. Part two will be a slightly different type of show. Right, number 11. What do you think of Aaron Banks's idea to get UKIP members to join the Tories? Does entryism ever work, or is the Tory party finished anyway?
Well, the Tory party is not finished, and I think Aaron's idea is a very good one. And indeed, it's not so much, nor is it entryism. In most cases, well, certainly in many cases, this will be people rejoining the Tory party. Many people left the Tory party to join UKIP in utter despair. When John Major was Prime Minister, many people joined UKIP. There was a huge move from Tory to UKIP. And effectively what we're seeing is a movement back of good people into local Tory associations. Great, because that increases the chance of a sensible Tory leader. We've got to have a sensible Prime Minister. At the moment, we don't. We've got to have a Prime Minister who's committed to the referendum result and delivering Brexit. We don't. And UKIP can't get an MP elected. They haven't, aside from the two very odd circumstances of existing major party MPs defecting and then winning by-elections, largely as a result of their personal support in the constituencies. Apart from those two odd incidences of Clacton-on-Sea and Rochester and Strood, UKIP have never had an MP elected.
Right,
so
Michael.
They're nowhere near forming a government. They can't form a government without a majority in the House of Commons. They can't get a single... They're unlikely in the 2020 election to get a single MP elected.
Michael.
So it has to be the Tory party. And Labour, we can write off Labour under Corbyn.
Okay, so that is, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of part one. My thanks to Michael for coming into the studios. We will be having a part two in the next few minutes, so please stand by for that. All I will say is I do agree with you, Michael. UKIP cannot do this on their own. There are many issues that particular party will not cover. They do profess freedom of speech, as I'm sure you're aware, Michael,
Yeah.
but then they ban certain people from speaking at their rallies. And that obviously is very hypocritical. That's just one example of why political parties cannot be trusted.
Well, like poor old Godfrey Bloom. It was
Exactly,
it was a
poor
lovely
old
chap,
Godfrey
Godfrey.
Bloom. So, we don't want a hypocritical society. We do want freedom of speech, no doubt about that. But we want people to be educated about other issues like chemical trails, like the rollout of 5G, like military unification. So in part 2, please keep listening, and we shall talk about trade deals, military unification, and so much more. Thank you very much for listening, and see you again soon. Goodbye.